When Star Wars The Clone Wars got renewed for its 7th and final season, this was like a gift from the Force. Back when the show was originally cancelled, the Lucasfilm Animation Group had a lot of stories left to tell in this era of the Star Wars universe. We got a half season in the form of the Lost episodes release after the Clone Wars went off air, but recently, we did get to see the climactic conclusion to what is arguably the best show in Star Wars history. However, the Season 7 that we got, while still amazing, was actually only a shadow of what was originally intended. Many of you may have seen the unfinished reels and storyboard art of the cancelled episodes, but today we wanted to open a holocron from another timeline to give context to those unfinished images and stories. That's right, today we are going to be talking all about the cancelled story arcs of the original Season 7, and possibly even an 8th season of Star Wars The Clone Wars. Before we dive in though, if you're interested in us exploring more behind the scenes story and content, be sure to let us know down below. And without further ado, let us enter the archives. According to the Lucasfilm Story Group, there were a total of 13 cancelled story arcs. These would have made up the remainder of Season 6 and the first few drafts of Season 7 and 8. It was also stated that these stories were created by George Lucas personally, and would have been a massive expansion on the Star Wars universe that came from George. And because of this, Pablo Hidalgo confirmed that each cut story is actually currently canon. In an interview he said this: "Even though those Clone Wars episodes did not get publicly revealed, we still look at their core stories as having happened in the universe. However, despite what Pablo has said, we do know that the continuity of a few of the episodes and arcs have been retconned due to material that has come out since then. Having said that though, there is always a chance that we could see more stories like this come to light in the future. Several of them made it into the final season of the Clone Wars, and other arcs had been adapted into outside reading material such as books or comics, but as for the rest, they are all yet to be explored." To start off our deep dive, we'll go ahead and talk about the ones that have been adapted into full stories. The final season of the Clone Wars was considered the introduction of the Bad Batch, as well as Ahsoka's wandering after she departed the Jedi Temple, the Siege of Mandalore, and ending of course with Order 66 as the final conclusion to the series. As for what happened elsewhere though, the Son of Dathomir comics was adapted, and what would have likely been the ending of Season 6. The series adapts the 4-episode arc which showcased the very end to Maul's Clone Wars journey. It picks up right after Sidious has captured him, showing Maul to be in a prison facility and under heavy torture by Sidious and Dooku. Thanks to the efforts of Death Watch loyalists though, Maul would escape and go on a rampage of revenge against Sidious. With guidance from the spirit of Mother Talzin, Maul would go on the run, avoiding Separatist forces and Jedi alike while gaining the temporary allegiances of one Count Dooku. But in the process, he would lose his criminal empire that he had built from the Black Sun and the Pike Syndicate. It would all end with the climactic battle between Maul, the spirit of Mother Talzin possessing Dooku, Sidious, and General Grievous. By the conclusion, Sidious would kill Mother Talzin at last, leaving Maul with nothing as he's dragged away kicking and screaming by the last of Death Watch. If you haven't yet, I highly recommend checking out the Son of Dathomir comic run for yourself, as it gives a very satisfying end to Maul's journey, and bridges the Clone Wars story to Rebels very nicely. The next story arc of the Clone Wars was The Dark Disciple, which was adapted from the 8-episode arc that would have given the conclusion to Ventress. This story is very long, so we'll keep it quite brief here. The Jedi Council here finally decides that it's time to put an end to Count Dooku's villainy, and officially orders an assassination. Quinlan Vos is the Jedi selected for the job, and by the orders of Yoda, Quinlan goes undercover to learn all he can from Dooku, aiding the help of Ventress, as she would be the only one who would know how to get close to him. During their time together, the two would end up falling in love, as Vos began using the dark side as Ventress directed him to do so. Quinlan would end up getting captured by Dooku when the final assassination attempt would fail, and from Dooku's torture, Quinlan Vos would embrace the dark side. This would lead Ventress to reaching out to Obi-Wan Kenobi and directly to the Jedi Council for help. Now this entire time, Quinlan was playing the double agent as he was attempting to try to get close to Dooku and maybe uncover the truth of who Sidious was. However, Ventress knows that he doesn't understand what he has got himself into and the power of what he is dealing with. Eventually, Ventress would end up sacrificing her own life to save the life of Quinlan Vos, forcing Quinlan back to the light side as he's put in a rehabilitation center by the Jedi, and thus, Ventress is given a funeral back on the world of Dathomir. Thanks to the Bad Batch though, we know that due to Night Sister magic, Ventress was somehow resurrected. But with that said, if you're interested in a great end to the story of Ventress, Dark Disciple is a very good read. The last story arc to have any visible media attached to it would be the Crystal Crisis of Utapau. This would be where Obi-Wan and Anakin were sent to Utapau in order to investigate the assassination of a Jedi Master by the name of Tu-An. You can find the entire plot synopsis of each episode in the arc online. Unfinished story reels exist on the DVD version of the Clone Wars Season 6, and while the animation is not finished, it includes a now famous scene where Obi-Wan and Anakin are setting up camp. In the scene, Anakin expresses his aggravation that the Council did not stand with Ahsoka during her trial, and thus, Ahsoka was forced to leave. Obi-Wan argues that it was her own decision though, but Anakin asks his master how he would feel if Anakin ever failed him. Obi-Wan lays down and says that this would never happen. This is a truly heartbreaking scene, and one of the best of the entire series. Along with the episode arc though, would also come another duel between Kenobi and Grievous, as this is one of many in the 4-part murder mystery story arc. It all turns out that there is a massive Kyber crystal on Utapau which is being sold to the highest bidder, which is of course one Count Dooku. During the arc, the Jedi would battle Grievous frequently along with pirates for control of the crystal. It ends with the two Jedi being forced to destroy the Kyber crystal rather than claiming it, and when Kenobi and Skywalker report back to Yoda and the rest of the Council, the Jedi Grandmaster explains that in the ancient days, that the Sith had constructed superweapons using Kyber technology, and he fears that the mysterious Darth Sidious could be attempting to do the same, leading of course to the Death Star. Now we're getting to story arcs that are completely unfinished and remain in the first draft form. And now, we have one of our favorites, we have the Shrine in the Depths. This is one that we've been talking about recently on the channel, and since we did an entire holocron on the topic, we'll keep our explanation here short as well. Simply put, it is revealed that the Jedi Temple has been built over top of a secret Sith shrine, one that is leaking darkside energies into the Jedi Temple. This would have explained why the Jedi were weaker, and their vision was clouded. In the story, Ahsoka would rejoin with Anakin and Obi-Wan as they drilled beneath the temple and discovered the shrine while on a mission to rescue Jedi Master Yoda. Yoda, who apparently either gets lost or is trapped there beneath the shrine. The Tarkin novel actually retcons most of the story though, as Darth Vader did not know that the shrine existed, as Sidious kept it a secret from him. But whether Obi-Wan, Yoda, or Ahsoka knew about the shrine is still largely up for debate and in the air, but the shrine does still exist as a massive part of Star Wars canon in the previous Republic. A very unexpected part of the Clone Wars Lost episodes is something we're about to break into, and that is that the Yuuzhan Vong were going to enter canon. This is the one story arc that we have little to no information about, except that it would have featured a Vong scout ship testing the defenses of the Republic. There would have been themes such as alien abduction, and it was going to have a distinctly horror-like vibe to it. Pablo Hidalgo describes it as being like the X-Files but set in Star Wars. The actual inclusion of the Yuuzhan Vong would have been very minimal, but there wasn't going to be an exploration of their origins besides it being mentioned that they were from a separate galaxy. Just a hint. The change that Lucas made, however, is that they would not be immune to the Force as they were in Star Wars Legends. This change was made to maintain the integrity of George's description of how the Force worked. A whole discussion can surround this, but according to Pablo Hidalgo, whatever happened in this story still took place, which means that if that is to be taken as truth, then the Yuuzhan Vong are officially canon. But again, that can be debated. The Bounty Hunter arc is next, and would be a 4-episode series that would have essentially functioned as Boba Fett's graduation, his birth as a deadly bounty hunter that we know today. The majority of the story arc would see Boba Fett teaming up with Cad Bane, as Cad Bane would take the boy under his wing personally. They would have been accompanied by other bounty hunters such as Aurra Sing, Bossk, and Embo. The show would end with the now famous shootout between Boba and Bane, which does exist as an unfinished story reel. This would have told us the story of how Boba Fett got the large dent on his helmet, and it would have been the official death of Cad Bane. However, again, this has been retconned since Cad Bane appeared in the Boba Fett series. Having said that, according to the dialogue, this story arc and the shootout still happened in canon. Moving on, we know that George Lucas absolutely loves Wookiees, and his love for them would have been put on full showcase during the Kashyyyk arc, one that would have explained why Yoda had such good relations with the Wookiees. These set of episodes were going to explore one of George's earliest idea for the Wookiee culture, which was that they have a very deep, almost Force-like connection to the trees, and can basically speak to the world around them. Dave Filoni said that this arc would have started with Yoda and the Bad Batch going to Kashyyyk to help against the Trandoshan hunters, who were backed by the Separatists. Chief Tarful and even Chewbacca would have played major roles in this story arc as well, and apparently everyone would ride on a giant ape lizard that were holy to the Wookiee culture. In one scene, Tarful would ask the tree spirits for permission to go into battle against an enemy, showcasing Lucas's idea of the Wookiees' tree-based religion. And according to some of the descriptions, this story arc would have included references to the Knights of the Old Republic and the Star Wars Holiday Special. The last 2 stories that were scripted included the return to Mon Cala, which was a Padme Focus story arc that saw her going to Mon Cala to settle an assassination conflict, one between the Quarren and the Mon Calamari. The goal was to gain both of their political backing in a vote to remove Chancellor Palpatine from office. And finally, we have the story arc starring Captain Rex and R2-D2, one which would have centered around a dispute between the clone army and the clone pilots. The two would argue about who contributed more to the Grand Army of the Republic, and who had the tougher job. Rex would end up finding himself in the middle of a bet, which now saw him flying a starfighter with R2-D2 as his co-pilot. Apparently this would have been heavily inspired by Top Gun. However, while it started out light and fun, the story arc would get dark quickly, as Rex would end up stranded alone on one of the moons of Ryloth. He and R2 would grow a fast friendship with a reprogrammed B2 super battle droid, but not much else is known about what happens. All we know is that Brent Friedman stated that the story went to very unexpected places and would get dark quick. And that, my friends, was the original plans for Season 6, 7, and 8 of the Clone Wars. The last thing we have was not anything that's been fully drafted, but smaller concepts that were made up from Dave Filoni and the team. The team had originally spitballed ideas of an Aura Singh-focused story arc. And finally, a story with Barriss Offee that may have ended with her taking her own life. We all know that the Clone Wars grew up very quickly with its audience, and didn't shy away from darker themes in the later episodes, but needless to say, this seems that the original Season 7 was going to be far darker and more serious than any of the show that had come before it. And if we're being completely honest, while we absolutely love the Season 7 that we got, it would have been amazing to see all of these story arcs produced. They sound like great additions to the canon lore, but not only this, but the stories sound genuinely compelling, and they seem like a fun ride. A lot of them seem like they were aiming to give satisfying conclusions to the story threads and characters that we had grown up with over the course of the 3-year-long war. Had all of them been produced like this, I do feel like the Clone Wars would have gone out with an even more spectacular bang. But now I have to ask you, what do you think of the original Clone Wars 6, 7, and 8? And if you could choose just 2 of these story arcs, which ones would you pick? And would you wish that the final season of the Clone Wars would have included all that was originally planned for it? My friends, if you would like us to make a holocron on any of these one individual stories, then please be sure to let us know down below and we will look into it. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us in the archives today, and we look forward to having you back here soon. As always, may the Force be with you, and have a phenomenal day.